Yep, perfect. I see some of our graduates peeking in. Hi. Lacey, oh good, okay.
Hello.
And now we're live on YouTube. Perfect, good job.
Uh, are we? Yeah, I can't
Yep,
tell.
yep, it's telling me we are, so that's great.
Okay, let me get this one out of the way.
Yep, can you hit them in? Thank you so much.
I've got so many different screens I'm looking at here. So
You just have to hope no one knocks on the doors because then I have to pick it
I
up
know.
and you'll get dizzy.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start us, Mrs. Doherty, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Father Gerard. That's
Um,
perfect.
let me just get back to what I had here before. Okay. Um, so, Mrs. Ferrari, we'll keep letting people in. Welcome, everyone. Maybe some of you have were with us at the last meeting, caught the tail end of it, and have come back again. So, thank you. I'm just going to begin us with prayer and then set the tone, and then let Mrs. Doherty uh, kind of share with you what we know so far, and then give you the opportunity to ask questions, and hopefully we're able to answer almost all of them, all of them. All right. So, name the Father and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. From the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Then children were brought to him that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked them, but Jesus said, "Let the children come to me and do not prevent them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." After he placed his hand, after he placed his hands on them. Gracious God, we come to you at the beginning of this academic year with our many feelings, expectations, fears, and hopes. Help us to remember, however, we have the comforting assurance of our Lord who calls our children to him without obstruction. Loving God, for all of us, this is a time of transition. It is a transition from the work and leisure of summer back to the classroom. It's a transition from the time spent with family and friends. It is a transition from the assuring surroundings of our homes. And so we pray, Lord, that you give us patience with ourselves as we transition, as well as patience with one another. Faithful God, this is totally new for all of us. In sadness, we went away from our school community, and in hopefulness, we return. Turn our anxieties to a quiet confidence with the knowledge that you are always with us. Give us a new perspective to see the challenging times as a new opportunity to grow and develop the many gifts you have given us. And on this feast day of St. Monica, we pray prayed ceaselessly for her son, St. Augustine, who she entrusted to you, O Lord. We entrust our children, our families, our teachers, our principal, our staff, and our school to you. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. So let's begin with a story that's given me kind of perspective on where we're at. So years ago, when I was at Holy Trinity and I was asked to take over the London trip, we used to go to London for a week with students, and I was asked to kind of run the whole thing. And so I did, and that first night after we flew across the country, we got to our hotels, we're all exhausted. I got to my room, and I thought to myself, this is insane. How did you think that you could take other people's children to the other side of the world and think you're going to sleep tonight? But we did. And but that's also kind of the way I feel, and Mrs. Doherty feels too. Like, you're entrusting your children to us, and we're trying, we will do the best that we can, but it's uncharted territory. So we just want to be able to have conversation today, share with you what what we know, and just establish a spirit of communication, of openness, of confidence, of trust. My biggest prayer for this school year is that we continue to talk to each other. We don't feel that our questions are answered. ask them again. The worst thing that we can do is divide off into our own little groups and complain and talk amongst ourselves, and nothing happens. So that's the spirit of it. I do want to say that, you know, a lot of hard work has been happening, and Mrs. Doherty will explain, you know, where the expertise has come from. But, you know, the other day I was watching the governor, and he was talking about schools opening, and he said, you know, the people who are coming up with the plans, they're all bureaucrats. The real people that decide the school's opening are parents and teachers. Well, that's not true. I mean, maybe in some ways, maybe in the public school system, but this has been worked on, not by bureaucrats, but certainly by people who love and care for your students. Certainly Mrs. Doherty, she has not had a summer. Somehow she managed to have a grandchild born in the midst of all this. But you know, she has worked every single week. She has been here, taken a few days here and there. So I just want to thank her. I want to thank Mrs. Ferrari and Mrs. Calabro, who have been here as well, who have kept Mrs. Doherty sane, I think. So they've worked really, really hard. I just want to thank them for that. Mrs. Ferrari is here with us. She's going to monitor the questions. I'll try to monitor them as well. I just want to ask, let Mrs. Doherty speak and kind of go through things and pay attention, because you may ask a question that she may be already speaking about. I ask you, when you ask the questions, to put them in the chat. It's hard for us to see where, you know, who might have a question. So put it into the chat and make it to everyone so that we can all see them, not just Mrs. Doherty, because Mrs. Ferrari and I will look at them, but also, you know, you've seen a question's been asked and you don't have to ask it again. So Mrs. Doherty, all you.
Thank you so much, Father Gerard. I do want to begin with, you know, for the past 9 years, starting 10 years, I've always felt so blessed to be here because of the open communication and the trust and the honesty that I feel permeates everything that we do. And I'm thrilled with that. And that's why I apologize in some respect for all of the emails that you're getting from me over the summer. But I really feel that if I know something about us opening in September, you should know it as well. With that being said, I just want to say to the person that is here with younger children, you're absolutely fine to be here. I can't answer you right now privately, but you may stay no matter what grade your child is in. And I do reiterate what Father Gerard said. Please send the questions to everyone so Father Gerard and Mrs. Ferrari can tell me what's being asked and I can answer them. So we are opening, as many of you saw. It's a staggered opening on the Tuesday, September 8th. It will only be our 7th and 8th graders. They will not come back until Monday, the 14th. On Wednesday, September 9th, it will be our 5th and 6th graders. They'll come back on the 14th as well. On Thursday, it will be our 1st to 4th graders. And on Friday, it will be our nursery through kindergarten. And everyone will start together on the 14th. And all of those days are 11:15 dismissal. And I share with you that what we will be doing with the children those days is training them. They'll be watching a video on why we're doing this and how we can approach schools safely and keep us all healthy and happy. The video is a short 10-minute video, age appropriate for the children. And then the teachers will go through the rules and the regulations and how we're going to stay happy and healthy and learning and enjoying each other here at Holy Family. There will be arrows on staircases and in hallways showing children where to go. There will be signs giving them the 6-foot and the 3-foot distance. Everyone will arrive in masks. Their temperature will be taken. There's someone, thank you. Students' temperatures will be taken daily. All staff members, teachers, myself will all be taken daily. Students will fill out a form. Families will fill out a form for their students on Sunday night or prior to 7 a.m. Monday morning. Teachers will fill a very similar form out every single day. It's a Google form. The teacher will pull in the parking lot into their spot. They'll fill the form out. They'll come to me, get their temperature checked, and we'll move forward. The form simply gives us, have you traveled outside of New York over the weekend? Have you been in contact with anyone with COVID? It's pretty basic and similar to the form if you go to the doctor's office. All of these things I'm telling you now come after few months of working with Parata Consulting. They're a threat mitigation and emergency management reopening plan company. They're experts in their field. They along with our legal department, the Department of Education, New York State Ed, the CDC, and Nassau County Department of Health. We meet regularly and make decisions and in the best interest of our children. I'm going to begin by telling you that we're erring on the side of caution on every level. We don't want anybody put at risk for unnecessary reasons. I said in the earlier meeting tonight, when I started doing this planning with Father Gerard's approval and hiring the company, I constantly bring myself to what would I do if this was my child? Like, what would I do? So please know that the decisions are made not as a teacher, but more importantly, as a parent who loves her children, just like you all do. So all of our decisions are made with your children's best interest in mind. And grandchildren. Yes, you're lucky I'm not just holding my phone up with his pictures and oohing and eyeing over him because he is quite cute. So we are blessed. When Parada Consulting first came through our building, they consider us not only enrollment-wise a large school for our diocese, but our physical school building and our classrooms are considered a larger school building. So we're lucky in that respect because our classrooms can easily hold 27 students 6 feet apart. We are not going to that number in any of our classrooms. We're keeping them smaller. Students will come into the building wearing masks, and I know you've gotten many emails from me. I try to share the information as soon as I get it and digest it and make sense out of it to send to you. And last night we received information that the measurement was changed again. And it looks like in many of our classrooms, children will be able to, after the first 2 weeks of school, remove their masks. We will be able to keep them 6 feet apart throughout the school day learning. They will not be changing classes. Teachers will be changing classes. So there's no issue with sanitizing or disinfecting on that level. If a child is 6 feet apart and can take their mask off, it will be easier for them to learn. Teachers will remain masked throughout the day unless they go in the front of the room, a very far distance from the students, well over 6 feet. They can pull their mask down, give them a smile, whatever, but they will remain masked. Adults will mostly be in masks all day long. Students, we're hoping, will be able to remove them. However, we have many students that we've met in the parking lot recently that love their masks, and families that feel strongly that we should stay in masks. And that's your opinion. That's not for anybody to judge. If that's your choice, the child can remain masked all day. If children are masked all day, at least every 40 minutes, they will get a 2 to 5 or 2 to 6 minute mask break. How we're going to handle that is how we're going to handle many of the things that go on throughout our day. And I'm sorry that you have to listen to me talk to you for so long. I feel like I'm giving a college lecture. Our classes will be divided into what we're calling cohorts, which is familiar to everyone, I'm sure, in this day and age. And every homeroom is a cohort. And in that cohort, we are podding our children. There'll be a blue pod and a gold pod. Thank you. And that is how we'll have our mask breaks. That is how we'll have lunch and recess. They'll go out as a pod, which is a smaller group of a one cohort. That also makes it easier for teachers to give students one-on-one attention in the classroom or outside of the classroom, wherever it may be needed. Arrival, as I said, will start at 8 o'clock and it will go for an elongated period because of the temperature checks. But students should be at school before 8:25, just as always. Dismissal will be from classrooms. Every time I say this, I get a little choked up because as much as the teachers love that, it gives them more time with the children to pack up. My favorite part of every day was when we gathered in our gymnasium and prayed together, and not be able to do that. I find that very sad. It's even hard for me to even talk about it because I'm like, that was my favorite part, the whole school family together praying and ending our day and saying, go safely, but we can't have that. So just, yeah, so opening and closing prayers will be done over the intercom, of course. Our morning prayer will no longer include God Bless America, as we don't have the 12 foot of distance in my office to have anybody sing that, and singing requires 12 feet of distance. Dismissal will begin at 2:35 as it always has, but unlike in the past, all buses will be dismissed first and walkers will be dismissed last. in an effort to just keep the hallways free of congestion. And children, once again, dismissing, will be in masks at all times. Did you get that? I'm trying to think. I just lost my train of thought for a second there. The company that we hired is working with us on a daily basis. He sends us changes every day. That's last night. It was after 5 o'clock that Father Gerard and I got the mask change for the distance and measuring desks. That's a good thing. And as soon as we get any changes, we're going to share them with you in the spirit of being not only good communication, but being very transparent and honest with you. As soon as we know something, we want you to know something. I know there's a lot of questions about the remote learning, so I just want to go over that with you. We do not have a true hybrid model here at Holy Family. We have either an all-in or an all-out model. At this point, if you start school in September and it's working, that's wonderful. If you start and 3 weeks in, you feel like your anxiety, your child's anxiety, whatever is too much and you don't think we're doing a good job, first and foremost, please let me know what you think we're doing wrong. But you may absolutely change your child to a remote learner. We ask that you don't go back and forth from remote learning to in-school learning because it gives us a really difficult job with attendance for New York State. So if you choose remote, your attendance will be taken in a very different manner than if you choose to be an in-school learner. The same thing goes for if you choose to be remote in September, and then you see like, oh my gosh, it's October 1st, they're doing a phenomenal job, then please, you can, of course, bring your child back in, but you just can't be remote this week, in school next week. That's not acceptable.
Recommendation of pre-recorded anthem. Could we do that?
Yes, we can do a pre-recorded anthem. It won't be my voice. So I apologize. So that's how the remote learning will work. The remote learning students will follow the exact same bell schedule as our in-school students. So it will be expected that your child is on their device learning. Their face must be shown. We learned a lot in our March to June timeframe with children and how they would put their little avatar or whatever up, or their little initial or their name. And they weren't really there. We'd call on them when we were in the classes and they weren't there. So it will be mandated by us, by Holy Family, not by the state, that a child is visible on the remote learning. All remote learning will be done through Google Meets in the Google Classroom. It's a much easier way to do that than Zoom, believe it or not, if you're using it every day. The remote learning will take tests. They'll do everything just like everybody else. But we feel very strongly that we can do this in our school building, and we're confident with that. In the event, let me just say, so everybody is divided into homerooms, which are considered cohorts. We don't have any homeroom that goes up to that number of 27 that Parata, the threat mitigation company, allowed us to have. Our largest homeroom, I believe, is 22. Our 7th and 8th graders will be divided as always. Unfortunately, because we're in cohorts and pods, we cannot have them split for their Regents courses or non-Regents courses. So they will be in a homeroom with all the Regent students and in a homeroom with all the non-Regent students in 7th and 8th grade. There's no more commingling allowed. I know that there's many questions regarding what happens if, God forbid, there is a confirmed case of COVID in our school family. So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. The first is if, God forbid, you weren't thinking, which I know none of you will do this, if you have an open COVID test, we stay home and we wait for the results. But God forbid somebody makes that mistake. If somebody is in the school building and we are informed that the child or teacher, it wouldn't be a teacher though, they would not, tested positive for COVID, we have to immediately close the school. We have 15 minutes to notify all of you, notify the bus companies to see if they can come earlier. At that point, doors that will now remain open at all times, even though it's a fire code regulation, it has been waived. In New York State, the fire marshal waived closing doors. Doors will be closed if, God forbid, there's a positive case in the school. The child will be obviously removed and brought into a quarantine room, for lack of a better word, supervised from a 12-foot distance by myself or somebody, a school staff member. And we would be asking people to pick their children up At that time, the cleaning company would come in, they would do a full sanitation and disinfection of the building, and the school will be permitted to be opened with Parada's consulting within 24 hours. After 24 hours, I apologize. In the event that a child has a fever in the classroom, is acting funny, gets sent to the nurse thinks there might be a problem, it could be COVID. It's not just a simple cold or the allergy as we come into all those crazy seasons with the flu and allergies. It won't be like that. The child will go to the nurse. If the nurse thinks that it could possibly be COVID, you will be called. We'd ask you to take your child to PM Pediatrics or your pediatrician and have a COVID test if the pediatrician says it's warranted. And at that point, your child would stay home until the COVID test was negative. In the event that that test was positive, that class will go into remote learning for 2 weeks. The teacher will stay home and teach them remotely, and the children in that class or cohort will stay home for 2 weeks. If a teacher gets sick, that teacher is going to be teaching remotely for 2 weeks. However, we're waiting on the governor or the state's final comment on the fact that teachers and administrators have been declared essential workers. And if that's the case, then it will only be 7 days that the teachers have to quarantine outside of the school and do remote learning. I apologize. You just said something, Mrs. Ferrari.
A lot of questions on remote learning.
Yes. I know that someone is asking if a child is out sick, can they sign in remotely? That goes back to the attendance regulations in New York State, and they really can't because if they're out sick, they're home sick. They should be absent. And if they're remotely learning, like in March through June, we had no one that was ever absent because we couldn't do their attendance. There was no way to do it. So now that we have a procedure from the state to take attendance for remote learning, it has to be adhered to. So we really should not. However, please remember, all of you, that we are going to a complete Google Classroom school, so that everything that is done in school throughout the day is going to be right on the Google Classroom. So it's almost like you don't even need the teacher to be teaching the bell schedule if you're at home, because you just look at your Google Classroom and you do your work. I mean, the teaching piece, of course, is important in the modeling, but everything will be right on Google Classroom, as well as the link to the Google Meets. But those Google Meets will only be open to children whose family has decided they are a remote learner.
Mrs. Doherty, I'm going to, Mrs. Ferry, you can keep watching too, but there's a lot of questions. So
Yes,
maybe we can I'll go through them. And Mrs. Ferrari, if you see that we're repeating one or there's something that we're missing. But so I'm going to start right from the beginning. Hold on. Yeah. So we talked about right in the beginning, the opening prayer. Yes, that'll be done over the intercom. Could we do the national anthem or God Bless America over the intercom with a recorded device? Yes, but children can't sing along in their classrooms because we don't have the distance, right?
No.
How many children are, I'm skipping one. You want to talk a little bit about plastic barriers around the desks and why we're not using them? But
I will talk about those. Thank you, Father Gerard, for reminding me, and Mrs. Ferrari. So the plastic barriers and those plastic shields, basically they're deemed by the CDC as nothing better than a not effective sneeze guard. They do not meet fire code. They're dangerous in that respect. The second thing about them, the shields that the children wear on their face, they catch the germs. So the mask is not, fabric and paper have a very low transmission rate. Plastic has a much higher transmission rate of any kind of a sickness. So they're not recommended because they're not really that safe for children to wear. The desk barriers that many schools went ahead and purchased, we heard on last Friday, and again reiterated by legal on Tuesday, that number one, many of them don't meet the fire code. They're not fire retardant. They're not really that safe. And as much as you're taking your mask off behind them, they're not really helping you. Again, it's a glorified sneeze guard. So both Parada and legal and the CDC are not recommending them anymore. So we are not using those. Additionally, just on those things, so that you're aware of the classrooms will be cleaned incredibly well every evening. Every touch spot, every doorknob, every light switch, every handrail, anything that is touched will be disinfected daily. In the classrooms at night, the children will be taking all of their things home, and so will the teachers. So nothing really will be in those classrooms, so they can go in and do a thorough sanitizing of those classrooms every day. Things that are left in school will be sealed in lockers, not used by children. The teachers will be putting things in lockers and taking things out of lockers with a gloved hand in many cases, not for the touching the item. It's more that when they go to hand that item to a child, they don't want contact of their hands. So I hope that answers that question. So we're
You
not,
wanted to just, there's been a lot of questions about how the grades are being divided. There was how many kids are in 5th grade, how many in 6th grade, what's going on. So if you want to just go through that a little bit.
yes. So 5th grade is 2 classrooms of 16 students each. 6th grade is 2 classrooms of 15 students each. 7th grade is 2 classrooms. And now I'm going to forget, I think one is 8 and one is 9 and one is 13. But I'm going to be honest with you, if you could hold off on that, we have a new student and we're not sure if he's a Regents or a non-Regents. Actually, we have 2 that we're not sure of. So there's 22 7th graders and they are divided into 2 classrooms. They are not an even 11-11 because, as I said earlier, they are divided according to Regents or non-Regents. Our 8th grade is 35 students, 21 of them are Regents students. And as I said earlier, we can go up to 27 in that room, 24 in that room, I'm sorry, 8th grade, 24 in that room. It's a 6-window room, right, Nick? Yes, so so we're safe on that. There's 22 in there and the other 13 are in the the Regents class, if that helps everybody. And then our early childhood classes are very different. I know there's 1 or 2 early childhood people on here. The early childhood classes are capped, as you see on our website, between 15 and 16. I do want to bring attention to the fact that our plan that is on our website is in the process of being changed because we were able to do some really creative things for the children and give them more one-on-one time. Our 4th grade will not be in our cafeteria. Our cafeteria will be completely used for aftercare and morning care. Go ahead, you need this, you need that. Our 4th grade will be in classrooms. What we have done with all of our classes, and I don't know if I said this in this meeting, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, we are cohorts or our homerooms. And then within every cohort, whether it be nursery or 8th grade, you're going to have pods, a gold pod and a blue pod, school colors. And that is how we'll do lunch and recess. A pod will go to lunch, will eat their lunch in the classroom as a pod goes to thank you. Recess. It's just an easier way to do it. Our 4th grade and our 1st grade will be potted for more one-on-one attention with teachers. I hope that answers that question.
Okay.
School supplies will be, you can start bringing them in on the day that your child comes for their orientation day and continue bringing them in the following week. Please remember that everything will be going back and forth with your children. So if a teacher has asked, for a pack of loose leaf, we don't need 500 pieces of loose leaf a day. And I think all of the teachers' supply lists clearly say that, what they need to have in that backpack every day. Books, whether they be workbooks, the teachers will be ripping out pages from those. If they're hard-covered books, the teachers will be making a decision where they're mostly going to be used. If they're mostly going to be used in school, they will be kept in a locker at night and get sprayed down. If they're mostly going to be used at home, they'll be kept at home.
How many go in a pod?
Hello.
Yes. So if you have a question, if you want to just type it right in the chat box, Mrs. Ferrari will read it tonight.
I can't write it because I'm connected through the phone. I couldn't connect through the computer or any other device.
Okay.
So let me know when you can ask my questions.
Okay. Go ahead and ask your question. I'm just trying to find who it is.
Thank you. It's Izabela Mierzejewski.
Oh, hi, how are you? Okay, I'm just not.
I'm good,
seeing-
thanks. So my first question is, I saw that students will be bringing devices to
Yeah.
school. So the question is, if they come with a laptop, the laptop has a limited battery lifetime. So
Right.
I'm not sure how is it going to work, if they're going to be on the laptop all day or just few hours.
No,
My
no, no.
second question, okay.
They will not be on the laptop all day, just so you know that. The amount of time they'll be on their laptop will be very limited if they're in-school learners. If they're at-home learners, sadly, they'll be on their laptop or their device, whatever it may be, a little bit longer than the Pediatric Association recommends. And we will be working with Parata Consulting on that to see what we should require of our students, because I don't want a decision for safety of your child to keep them home. And then it turns out that we're, doing damage because their screen time is excessive. So I hope that helps, Mrs.
Okay.
Nijinsky.
Yes, it does. Thank you. My second question is, during the colder weather, they will have coats. So what's going to happen with the coats in the classroom? And the third question is, can we send head forms electronically to a specific email address, or we have to send them to school, hard copies to school?
What was that hard copy? Oh, health forms?
Yes.
You can absolutely send the health forms. You can send them right to Mrs. Sullivan electronically, or to Mrs. Ferrari or me or Mrs. Calabro. That's fine.
Okay.
And as
So
far as coats, when the cold weather comes in, please God, he has taken this away and we have a vaccine and we're back to close to normal. But if not, what will happen, and we've already tested this in all of our desks, the children will come in with their coat. Their coat will go on the back of their chair. I'll stand up to demonstrate this for you. So on the back, their coat will get hung over here, and their backpack will go on top of their coat with their coat sleeves through the backpack. So it won't be falling all day long. That will keep their supplies at their reach throughout the day.
thank you. You can mute me now. Thank you.
Okay.
So many questions, we're gonna catch up.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Father Gerard or Mrs. Ferrari.
Mrs. Ferry can go ahead. Does she have,
Books for remote learning?
there's,
We will be giving a date for the pickup of books for those that choose remote learning. Some of our books are coming in, but because of the change in every district on Long Island, they're coming in dribs and drabs. So as soon as we are confident that we have all the books that a child needs for remote learning, we will let you know.
okay. I'm just going to quick go through, because got a lot of questions and we're flying through them. What's the how are we measuring the distance between desks? Just a brief answer on that, Mrs. Doherty.
Yeah, that's very simple. The distance between desks was changed last night by the CDC to 6 feet off center. So it's a body thing. So it's 6 feet from the center of desk A to 6 feet to the center of desk B. That's next to each other. Front to back, it's 6 feet from the back of the child's chair that's attached to the desk to the center of that next desk.
Since lunch will be in the classroom every day, is it okay for parents to drop off lunch during lunchtime? The answer is no.
No.
To that, right? Yeah.
We're not even allowed to allow delivery people in our building as we begin this school year. Hopefully that will change. We embrace you as volunteers, but right now we're not allowed to have anybody in our building.
And lunch can be purchased and be brought to the classrooms, right?
Yes.
Live instruction, that's just going to be the teacher teaching, right? It's the same, it's the child. So you're in 4th grade, the teacher's going to be teaching in the classroom at the same time that they're being able to be seen remotely, right? That's how that's
Exactly.
working.
Yes.
Who cleans? The protocol for everyday cleaning, we're going to put the protocol up so parents can see that, correct? I think. And we do have, you want to talk about the new cleaning company and all that?
We have a new cleaning company, a beautiful background he brings here to us at Holy Family. He is a retired New York City detective, owns a security firm as well as a cleaning firm. He really came highly recommended and has proven to really know his stuff. I just this afternoon was able to read his final breakdown for what we asked of him and what he's going to do. So he will have someone, in addition to our personal staff that Father Gerard hires, the cleaning company will have a staff member in our building throughout the day. Our bathrooms will be cleaned regularly throughout the day. There is no mandate on the number of times. We're erring a little bit on the side of caution with that too, that we're going to clean them more times rather than less. The cleaning company at night, as I said earlier, will be disinfecting and sanitizing every touch surface. Touch surfaces defined by CDC are light switches, doorknobs, handrails, anything that could be touched by more than one person. They will also go into the classrooms. Early childhood classrooms fall under camp guidance and daycare guidance, so they are permitted to have a rug. Those rugs will be vacuumed and sanitized nightly. The entire classroom will be sanitized. That's the reason that we also are not leaving so much stuff in classrooms, because we'll get better sanitization if children are bringing everything home. Things that are left in classrooms at the end of the day will be removed, but it will be easier since we're dismissing from classrooms. We shouldn't have that problem.
Can you explain how in 2 weeks students do not have to wear masks? Was this guidelines from the state or a school decision? First of all, we have never made any decision based upon what we think. So I'm going to be clear about that. So go ahead, Ms. Doherty. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. No, that is in 2 weeks. They may not have to. I'm not saying they don't have to. The first 2 weeks, even though we may be 6 feet apart, we are going to keep masks on. It's just good practice. Let us get back into our building. Let children learn. Let them be happy and healthy and learning with their friends in the same room, and keep those masks on. In 2 weeks, if they're 6 feet apart, there is no reason for those masks. So the threat mitigation company, and I'm sorry, I'm just using the beginning of that, but it's such a long name of that emergency management reopening planning company. He has suggested that we keep them on for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, if they're 6 feet apart, we can take them off, because that's the CDC guidelines. But as Father Gerard said, none of us, Father Gerard, myself, the leadership team, none of us have made one decision without the input of the CDC, Parada, State Ed, Nassau County Department of Health. I was actually able yesterday to, I'm sorry that I have to look at this, I can't say his name, make a consultation with Dr. Eisenstein, who's the head of Nassau County Department of Health, and he's going to reach out to us so that our proactive measure that we have submitted to him on what we do if there is a case of COVID in our school family, it meets with his standards, and that he will be able to help us with the contact tracing on a much more rapid time frame than we would be able to do it ourselves.
I'll let Mrs. Ferrari, if you want to just look through a whole bunch, I'm just going to read the ones. There's 3 here on YouTube. So Ms. Doherty, maybe you can just answer them quickly.
Yes.
What will happen if our child's computer or iPad dies? Will they be able to recharge it? I think you answered that already, in the sense of that they're not using them that much during the day in school, right? Am I correct in that? Yeah, so that.
Absolutely, yes. And they are
Okay.
not mandatory, Father Gerard. They are not mandatory.
A lot of them are.
Okay. Where will kids eat their lunch? We said that's going to be in the
Classroom.
classrooms, right? And when is orientation day? I'm not sure what that question exactly means, but
So there will be orientation for the children, as described at the beginning of this meeting, a staggered reopening. There will be emails sent to you in the event that we need to do another one of these prior to school opening. We will. Teachers will be informing students, families, sorry. When I say students, I mean families. Teachers will be informing all of you of who your child has. Unlike in the past where your child comes to school the first day, you'll be getting an email next week from your child's teacher. So you'll know who your child has, you'll know what classroom they're in. And they'll be able to, on that first day, even though it's a staggered opening, the 7th and 8th graders will go in 3 feet apart with a mask on. They'll all know what room they're going to, and we'll all be there to assist as well. I forget, did that answer all of those, Father Gerard?
I think so, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Ferrari, I don't know if you picked out some. There, one letter have, so.
All the grades, a laptop, are they supposed to bring it, or just the 7th and 8th?
So at this time, the 7th and 8th, we're recommending that they have a device with them, but they do not need to have a device with them. It is not mandatory. And the rest of the grades, we're not recommending it. It's your call. You will be signing bring your own device policy that you sign every year, which means it's totally your child's personal belonging that they're totally responsible for. So in many of the grades, like the lower ones, we tell them not to bring them. They won't need them.
And will Chromebooks be given to people who are doing remote learning?
We are working with Hicksville schools right now to see who needs. People in the spring, when we asked who needed devices, we got a 0% response. No one in our school family needed them. Now, if people do need devices, they can contact us, and we will be working with the the Hicksville School District and the Morningstar team on getting devices. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Situation with COVID, how long will they have to be out? If there's a sibling situation, will they also have to be out?
I just do want to, yes.
School closes.
So there's a lot of questions on COVID, which I'll get to in one second. I just want to go back to something from our first meeting, and I see that a mom is asking it right here. Yes, if a student is doing remote learning, that student, number one, no avatar, no little initial. We need to see your face, we need to see your movement, and we need you to either be in your Holy Family School gym uniform or your Holy Family School uniform. We're not allowing children to be sitting on, it was exciting in March to be able to teach for a little bit for me, but I don't need to know every child's pajamas. It's just not, it's not good for them. So the children that are doing remote learning will be in their school uniform. I spoke with a pediatrician this week about coming back to school and wanted to get his honest to God feeling about this. And he's like, Mary, he said to me, they need to be in school. So if there's a real reason for them to remotely learn, make it feel like school. And I just think if they're in their uniforms and they're following a bell schedule, thank you. Is it the circled one? I apologize, that they'll learn better. Lessons recorded for viewing at a later date in case a child is sick. In most cases, all of the Google Meets are recorded. So yes, but remember also that much of what your child, especially if they're 4th through 8th grade, those children, everything is going to be on their Google Classroom. So that will be much easier for you. Everything will be on Google Classroom.
Will the teacher schedule a Google Meet for the remote
Yes,
learners if they're having
yes.
trouble?
Yes. So the teachers will not only be sending you an email inviting you to their back to school Meet the Teacher night, which will be handled just like this. They will also be available for extra help for remote learners, just like they were from March through June. If a child was struggling with something, they simply email their teacher and the teacher can go over it with them at a different time throughout the day.
How many teachers will be in class, and how will they handle 2 pods per classroom? Are they volunteers?
No, there are no volunteers. How many teachers? Every homeroom will have a teacher. However, if a homeroom, I'm going to give you an example of the 2 that this affects. 1st grade and 4th grade, they're small enough to just be 1 homeroom and remain in 1 classroom. However, thank God, we're blessed. We're podding them as we are with every other group, dividing them into a blue team and a gold team, blue pod and a gold pod. And the 4th grade and the 1st grade will actually have the opportunity to leave their room, half of them, the pod, and go to another room. That's only because they're larger, so it's easier to do it with them. How will teachers be handled? There'll be teachers and TAs in those rooms. Every classroom, every homeroom will have a teacher, just like we always have. Thank God we have not lost a lot of teachers this year, so we're in a good place.
Are face shields allowed?
Face shields are permitted, but I'm going to go back to it. They need to wear a mask with it. They are not fire retardant, and they do hold more germs because they're made out of plastic. You're much better off with the medical masks or the cotton masks or whatever masks that you find. We are not allowing gaiters and we're not allowing bandanas because they have been proven by the CDC to not be as reliable in a school setting. That's a new ruling that I'm waiting for the actual wording on. Once I get the actual wording, unfortunately, you'll get another email from me. But the masks, if we're wearing masks, we're wearing masks. A face shield does not take the place of a mask. The only thing that the CDC has said to me, said to us, I apologize, is a mask and 6-foot distance are interchangeable. If you're 6 feet apart, you don't need a mask. If you're less than 6 feet, you do. But those face guards are not, they can be used in addition to a mask if you feel strongly about them. For those of you that,
Can you just go again? You said you were going to talk COVID. Let's just talk a little bit about someone testing positive, where they're testing positive at home, school, all those kind of things. Someone who has a sibling that's tested positive, how does that affect the other class? Talk
Sure.
all that stuff. How
So-
many nurses do we have in the building? Is there one nurse assigned to COVID, one to regular things? Those are all questions that have popped up on here.
Okay, so we have one nurse in our building, and she is assigned to the health and well-being, physical well-being of the students. In the event we have a child that is tested, that appears to have symptoms of COVID, they will go into, I don't know, many people, even people in our own building, were not aware that we have 2 nurses' offices and they have separate doors. So the second door will be used as a, for lack of a better term, I don't like to use a quarantine room. It will be monitored as needed by myself or a staff member in the building with a 12-foot distance from the child. The child will simply go in and sit. We'll chat with them until you are able to get there to pick them up. You will either go to PM Pediatrics or your private pediatrician and have a COVID test if the symptoms warrant a COVID test. At that time, like any good parent, if you have strep throat or a stomach bug, you're going to keep your child home until they're healthy. You're not going to send them back to school the next day. First off, children need to be fever-free for over 24 hours before they can come back to school. And COVID is much more serious. As I said earlier, it's like, I hate to use this term, social justice issue, but it is. We have to be honest with each other and trust each other to tell the truth. So the child leaves, they test positive for COVID, then that classroom, there's someone, and the teacher will go into remote learning for 2 weeks because the child was in the classroom with COVID. If the child was away for the weekend, doesn't come to school Monday, tests positive Monday for COVID, that's fine. They weren't in the classroom. They weren't with the children since last week. So that's not a problem. The classroom would go. Now, in the event somebody sends a child to school sick with COVID, the school shuts down. And I think I said that earlier. I would hope that no one would ever send a child to school sick. I'm sure none of you would ever even think of doing that. So, but if that, God forbid, did happen, and the child was in the building and a parent called and said, I just got a COVID result and it's positive, at that point, we have to shut the school down and it will be sanitized and disinfected that evening, complete, floor to ceiling. And that if our cleaning company is incapable of doing it, for God forbid, they have 12 schools that have the same situation, Parada Consulting is able to come in and assist us with that. So those worries are not real big worries for me. My worry is more, why would a child be in the building sick? If a child presents with symptoms and that child gets tested positive, then the siblings must go for a COVID test.
Are there HEPA filters, air filters in the classrooms or throughout the school?
No, our air filtration system is simple. It's that of every other school. It is open doors, open windows, every classroom. We're very blessed. The first thing that the threat mitigation company said was how lucky we were that all of our classrooms have ceiling fans. We have a wall of windows. That's a big perk. I alluded to earlier, and I'll reiterate it to you, that the fire marshal in New York State is no longer requiring classroom doors to be closed throughout the day. He has waived that mandate and said classroom doors are to remain open, windows are to remain open unless pouring rain is draining in them, and fans to the best of our ability. And we'll be putting box fans, an additional box fan in every classroom, just to be a little safer and move that air around a little bit more. Next one.
A couple of remote learning now. If both parents work, the child's put into remote because of another child being sick causes an issue with the parents. Well,
I know.
that's the question.
I know.
They can't have it.
Oh, I know. So the question is that in the event, God forbid, can I just answer something that we have simple here? We will have, every child needs to come with a mask and a lanyard that holds that mask. But we will have a supply of, God forbid, something happens to the mask throughout the day, or a child gets off the bus and the mask is on the bus and the bus won't come back. We will have, of course, extra masks for use within our building. But children are required to come masked in their own mask every day. They won't be admitted in without one. What was that next question?
So, both parents work.
Oh, so the question that was just raised is if both parents work and the child's class is required to do remote learning. That's a CDC regulation that the cohort goes remote if there's a positive case of COVID in that cohort. It's not a Holy Family School or a state ed, that's a CDC mandate that the children cannot be back in the room because there was COVID in that classroom.
And if you start school start school in person and then you don't feel comfortable, can you go to remote?
Yes. So there's that question again. It was asked at the very beginning, but this might be someone that came in late. If you start school remote and 2 weeks into it, you think that we're doing a bad job, you're going to do two things. You're going to call me and tell me what we're doing wrong and what we could do better. And I'll attend to that immediately. And then you can go remote. You can absolutely go remote. What you can't do is go remote this week and in school learning next week, remote the fall. It can't be a back and forth. And it will be evaluated on a case-to-case basis. If you start school remote and then in 2 weeks you go, oh my gosh, they're doing an amazing job. Well, then we'll be delighted to welcome them back in 2 weeks. That's fine as well. Thank you so much. There are specials, limited, because phys ed they can't do anything. They have to be 12 feet apart to do any activities in phys ed. So yes, we have a phys ed teacher who will take them for walks, or some teacher will be taking them for walks throughout the day. They'll do jumping jacks, anything like that. The classes, believe it or not, nursery through 8th grade are going to do a Go Noodle type break every period or so, that they feel that the students need a little, wiggle room, and because they won't be changing classes. So when one group is out, maybe in the hallway standing, those other children will be able to stand up, do a Go Noodle stretch. Thank you. And then they will be going outside. There will be art. Music will also be handled very differently because the CDC requirement on music is that they're 12 feet apart to sing. So they will not be singing in classrooms. So there will be a music teacher coming into their classrooms, doing something related to music with them, but it won't be singing. As far as a printed calendar, I have stopped even printing my own copy to bring home. I just leave it on a flash drive because everything is changing so rapidly. The first thing I put on the calendar in the spring was the play. Well, we can't do the play right now. It has to be put on hold. School board meetings have to be put on hold. Masses have to be handled differently. We're a Catholic school. It's a good thing for masses to happen. The children, the teachers, it's good for us to come together and pray as a community. And those have to be reevaluated. Father Gerard and I have already been discussing that. Thank God for him. Will I consider a hybrid option at a later date? Of course I will. Anything that people are interested in having, please let me know. And no, nothing is set in stone by me. We're a community. It's our school. Father Gerard, the teachers, all of you, it's our school. So if you really feel strongly I need to consider something, please let me know. These two are answered. No, unfortunately, there can be no real before school extra help. What there is, though, for you to understand is that in a very well thought out, thanks to our leadership team, bell schedule. So when the children come in at 8 a.m., their first formal class doesn't begin till almost 9 a.m. So that 8 to 9 will have some real interesting, at a distant, individual stream talk, modeling of certain projects, because they really will be doing things at home, and the modeling will be done by the teacher. So there won't be like that, 7:30, all 5th graders can go to Mrs. Tennant's room for some math help, because only people allowed in that room are her homeroom children. So every homeroom, every cohort will have kind of an extra help session, but it won't be specific to that subject or topic, because we can't have the children leave their classroom to go to another classroom. Yes, there will
About the
still-
remote learners, Mrs. Doherty, is there extra help available for them? And maybe this is a good chance to talk a little bit about Mrs. Callie's role in
Yeah.
what we're doing too.
So in speaking with the pediatrician and speaking with a lot of experts in the field that know much more than I do, the big concern right now, in my concern and their concern, is the social and emotional well-being of our students. Academics are going to fall into place. We're blessed with really strong teachers. The placement of our teachers this year, I feel it surpasses last year on some levels. So they are going to work very close. Mrs. Callie has been working with me throughout the summer on planning lessons that address the social and emotional well-being of children. There still will be resource room. There still will be National Junior Honor Society. Believe it or not, we're working on a way to have Rachel's Challenge. Mrs. Callie will still be working with individual students, and she will also push in, beginning immediately with school starting on September 14th. She'll be here, of course, the 8th through the 11th, but on the 14th, she'll be pushing into classrooms to talk about what'd you feel good about, what'd you feel bad about when you were at home from March to June? What was the hardest thing? What was the best thing? How can we bring that best thing into school? How can we make you forget the hardest? Her lessons are very, very well thought out and based, in proven strategies. So we're lucky to have her. She is doing a couple of the model programs, which is important, but even more so, she's branching out those programs to fit our students and our students' needs individually and as a group.
If a COVID test is taken by a child, do they have to stay home or are they okay to be in school?
You should not, if your pediatrician or PM Pediatrics felt it was warranted to give your child a COVID test, you should not come back to school. Just like if your child had a strep test, if my child had a strep test, I would not send my child to school the next day until I heard that they tested negative for strep. This is even more important. COVID is much worse than strep. So if your child has an open open COVID test, they should not come to school until they hear that it's negative. I think I answered all of these. These are,
This is about
There was
remote
a,
learning, sent home due to the fever. Can they join remotely? Zoom, Google Meets?
the only people that will be in Google Meets, there will be no Zoom for education. The Zoom platform will be used for meetings like this, maybe a Rachel's Challenge meeting, a National Junior Honor Society orientation. That we'll use Zoom for those. Google Meets will be used solely for education. If a child is home sick, they cannot use Google Meets. If they're an in-school learner, they can't be doing remote learning for the day that they're homesick because of attendance. I said in the last meeting, and I'll repeat that again, when I meet tomorrow with Parada and legal, I will ask them to explain that again. But the New York State attendance policy is very different now because of the remote learning versus the in-school learning. So they will not be able to just sign in here and there if they're homesick for a day, if you're on vacation. However, please remember that everything that's done is going to be in that Google Classroom. All assignments, everything will be right in Google Classroom. So
Mrs. Doherty, it might be necessary at some point to really speak directly to those who are choosing the remote learning.
Yes,
How do they do that? What's the assessment going to be? What else? Mrs. Ferrari, you may have seen some other things that are on that, but when does their day start? All of that kind of stuff. So I'm sure you'll be updating everybody on that.
the next email I was going to send, and I'll just say it to all of you that are listening now, is to ask you if you are choosing remote learning for your child to please email me, and then I will email you the form that's required to be filled out by you and sent back, hard copy, sent back to me regarding remote learning. And once that's in place, then I will take all the remote learners' parents and we'll have a Zoom with that as well, just so you're aware. I will tell you that their login, we're being advised, but again, it's not finalized by CDC or State Ed, to do a 9-to-1, to do a 4-hour window. So what we've done here at Holy Family, to the best of our ability, you have that early morning 8 to 9 is, extra help, whatever going on in the homerooms for the in-school learners. We're trying to put our 1 o'clock many of our specials at the end of our day so that children aren't missing math, science, social studies. We don't want that to happen. In the event it has to happen, because we don't have 21 special subject teachers, in the event it does have to happen, then that child will stay remote learning until 2:35 with everybody else that's in school. And I know that's a long screen time. That's the pediatrician is worried about that when I spoke with him. But there's just no way around that with a school that is as large as our school is.
Is there a deadline for choosing an option?
Yes, there's a deadline for choosing in advance. If you're going to choose remote learning, when you get that form from me, you'll email me as soon as you decide you think remote is your best option. You'll email me and then I'll send you the form, and the form will have to be filled out prior to school starting on September 8th.
I had a question that just seems to be sent to me, but I'll ask it here, and I'm not really sure what it means. But the question is, was half a day schooling given a thought with morning and evening classes? I mean, evening, I know a number of our teachers are in this Zoom right now, and they all have to go home and have families as well too, and have their own children. So I wouldn't even think of having them work in the evening, if that's what it meant. I don't know if there was a thought about morning and then going home and then remote learning in the afternoon. I'm not sure if so. Mrs. Doherty, maybe you can talk just a little bit if there's been a thought process to why we're in school all day and not, morning in and then afternoon home or something like that.
Whoever asked that, it's a great question, because when we first met with the threat mitigation company and the Department of Ed, I was asking about that. Would it be wiser for us to have a 9-to-1 school day or an 8-to-1 school day? And the Parada Consulting, after coming to Holy Family, felt very strong and has me believing very strongly that we are able to safely reopen for an 8:35 to 2:35 school day. So we didn't go back on that. It is not something that won't happen in the future. We're in unprecedented times. There will be changes. As I'm getting changes every day, I'll share them with you, but it's not something that we don't know might happen in the future. It might be a recommendation. I do want to answer one question that I'm seeing here. As far as parents, unfortunately, if you read our plan, which is on our website, and it's the original, well, the second plan, the first update of it, and it will be updated again to reflect that fourth grade is not in the cafeteria and that we're not in masks mandatory all day for certain rooms. Parents are not permitted to come into the building. The only time a parent will come into the building, no volunteers, unfortunately, we can't have lunch parents or anything. The only time somebody that's not part of our school family cohort will come into the building is if your child is sick. And what will happen is you'll come to the front door where you normally come into the building for meetings, et cetera, and either Mrs. Sullivan or myself or a person assigned by me and our staff will meet you at the front door to, to explain what was going on with your child, if they were sick and what was the, presenting reason
Okay.
for thinking they were sick.
We have been on for over an hour at this point, and I think you, in general, Mrs. Doherty, you've answered most of the questions. I'll, finish the way I said before. We know there's going to be more questions, and we will do this again if we need to. I'm going to ask that if you have questions, need a clarification for something we shared here, to please email Mrs. Ferrari. That way, Mrs. Doherty can know that those things are going to one place, and all the other things that she's dealing with during the day, she's not having to sort through them. They certainly will be brought to her. But if you have additional questions, you want to follow up on something from here, just send them to Mrs. Ferrari. I'm grateful that she's going to do that, so we know that we're not missing any of the questions. And, like I said, it's all about communication. To continue to share your thoughts with us, and talk to each other and say, did I hear that right or whatever, but ultimately bring the question to us, because first of all, you may have a question that we haven't thought of yet, but also you're the first line of communication too, that you ask the question that others are asking, and then, we can share that back with you as well too. So, I think we have to continue to do the best we can to move forward you know, and I've not in any way, shape, or form been someone that's denied the seriousness of COVID and what's happened to us. But my fear is that it's also defining our lives, you know, and we have to figure out how to live through this. So we've come back to church. You know, we're going back to school. We're going to do the best that we can to remain healthy and safe, but it can't be the only story that we're telling, you know, or, you know, so that's my hope there as well. And I think, you know, there was a question about, you know, I see Mrs. Scannell's on here, but I think her audio is not working. There was one question about the younger children, even though we're not dealing with the younger children here, about, you know, how are they, you know, they learn through so much interaction and everything else. And Mrs. Scannell, I can see you. I know you can't speak, but you're on it, right? We're going to be okay with our younger children. She's just staring at me, so maybe she can't even hear us, but
I can answer that, Father Gerard. We are working on modeling, even with the older ones, modeling the projects. The younger ones in the classrooms, nursery and pre-K, are actually able to be near each other. They're actually able to sit at a table closer than you or I, because they fall under the camp and daycare guidelines. So the little ones are going to learn beautifully. Mrs. Scannell is going to model so much. We are allowed, she can talk now. Do you want to talk, Mrs. Scannell?
her audio is not working, I don't think.
Okay. Okay.
Is she connected? I thought I heard her. Okay.
No, it's not. Okay. So we will be modeling. Our teachers are now permitted to have carts. So they can put fun things on carts and wheel them in and model great things for them. And we will do our best to make everybody happy and healthy and learning.
Right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Doherty. Thank you, Mrs. Ferrari. And thank you all parents who are with us. And we're going to do this, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to try to have an amazing, awesome school year. So thanks, everyone, and have a
Thank you
good
all.
night.
Have a great night. Thank you.